Buenos dias. Welcome to another daily devotion. I'm your host once again. Is this working? El Padre. It's nice to see you on this wonderful day. Today we have Luke chapter 23, verses 1 through 25 in our midst. And we're going to spend a little bit of time also in the book of John today, because I want to give you an interesting picture. And so I'm just going to jump right in, and we're going to focus our time today on just the beginning here. It says in verse 1, "Then their whole assembly rose up and brought him before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, 'We found this man misleading our nation, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king.' So Pilate asked him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' He answered him, 'You say so.' Pilate then told the chief priests and the crowds, 'I find no grounds for charging this man.' Then they kept insisting, 'He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee, where he started, even to here.' When Pilate heard this, he asked if the man was Galilean. So today I want to focus on just this idea here, that what they are accusing Jesus of is misleading our nation, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king. Now, something that is important for us to recognize is in Rome, there was a law, and I'm going to totally jack up how to say this, but it was called La Majestas. And it was started sometime around the time of Tiberius. And Tiberius was emperor starting somewhere around AD 14 until AD 37. So Tiberius is actually the guy that is the emperor at the time of Jesus, and at the time of his crucifixion for sure. Not at his birth, but at the time of his crucifixion. And so because of that, one of the things that was encouraged, what begins as this teaching that the emperor, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica and a couple of other books by a guy named Ernest Metzger and Professor Yves Lassard and Alexander Koptev, all of these guys have verified these rules, these laws, these facts that the Romans believed, starting around the time of Tiberius, that Caesar was basically God. And so because of that, you were not only committing a crime, if you were going to commit treason, or you were going to try to overthrow the emperor, not only are you, politically doing it, you're spiritually doing it, or you're religiously doing it. And so Rome was instituting this merge of the state and religion. And so that's kind of the beginning, so to speak. It's not officially the beginning, but this is why when the United States was formed, they started this thought that the state and the religious institutions should be separate. They're allowed to operate simultaneously, not with the intention of ever saying that if you're a person that works for the state that you can't have religious views, but just saying that the state doesn't have the right to come into the church and dictate what the church says and does and believes, which is what Rome was doing. Nor is it saying that, similarly to like in Europe throughout a lot of the last several thousand years, or at least 1,000 years, where the state and the church were kind of all a part of the same thing, like the Church of England, or in Germany, the Lutheran Church. Um, and in those cases, your taxes pay your pastor. In those cases, your pastor can come in and charge you with legal issues. They can come in and arrest you. At this time, you were beginning to see in this particular empire how you have a local governance, so to speak, which would be like the Jews, but they weren't allowed to kill anybody. They weren't allowed to sentence anybody to death within the Roman time period, which is why they point that out to Pilate. And so, but according to around the time of Tiberius, this institution of treason, or the way that they were treating people who committed treason, starts becoming more common, more popular, and they had these people that their whole job was to run around and look for people who were trying to create treason now, or trying to create insurrections. It wasn't illegal to talk poorly about the emperor, like if you wanted to tell a joke, or if you just wanted to say, oh, I think he's a horrible person. Stuff like that was fine. But the moment you start gathering people with the intention of creating insurrection, or like, hey guys, let's get together, let's come up with a plan so that we can fight back, that was considered illegal and treasonous. The penalty for treason was death, and it was usually beheading, but it would include a confiscation of your property, and usually something called disenfranchisement or civil disability. In other words, they would totally one, you'd become like this infamous person, or this legend, sort of like I think John Dillinger, so to speak, or Al Capone, like these guys who, like, they're remembered for a long time, but not in a good way, right? And their property would be taken, their rights would be taken, their rights to be a legal citizen. So in Rome, the part of you see this a lot in the book of Acts, right? Like, you have people who have been taken over, and you can have, like, you can live in Israel and not be a Roman citizen, so you would have no legal rights, so to speak. And there were territories all over the place where you could be a citizen of those little territories, but not one of Rome. And so if you were a Roman citizen, you would have far more abilities. And so, like, even in the United States, think of it similarly to immigration. People that migrate to the United States from other countries, sure, maybe you're allowed to work here if you have a visa, sure. You know, you're allowed to come and you're allowed to do certain things, but you don't have the same rights. You can't vote. You can't run for office. There's several different things that you can't do if you're not a citizen. And so, with that being said, you know, those people, they're not going to get like tax benefits or anything like that. And so it's very similar, that there's all these like different legal things that are going on. And so let's take a moment here then. And so Jesus here is being accused of treason by the Jews. And he's telling them that, they're telling Pilate he was misleading the nation, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar, which we know isn't true, right? He told them to pay taxes to Caesar. They think it would be true that he's misleading the nation in the sense that he's telling them about the true path to God, and not the way that they've, it is the way that they have been doing it, but in a totally different way, because he's saying, like, hey, everything that you've been teaching is pointing to me, and they're saying no. And so they're trying to get Pilate to have Jesus executed for committing treason. Pilate asks him himself, Are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus, according to this, in verse 3, he says, you say so. Another way to translate it would be, that is true. In other words, Jesus is saying, yes, I am the king of the Jews. But this is what's interesting, is that there's this discussion that's recorded in the book of John that I would like to read for you, because I think it gives um, a little bit more clarity to what's going on, because Pilate then comes out and says, he's not guilty of anything. But yet, if he actually admitted, and if all that was said was, yes, I am, that could have made him guilty. But when you see here Jesus before Pilate in verse 28 of chapter 18 of the book of John, it says, well, actually, let's jump down to 29. So Pilate came out to them and said, what charge do you bring against this man? They answered him, if this man weren't a criminal, we wouldn't have handed him over to you. Captain Sarcastic. Verse 31, Pilate told them, you take him and judge him according to your laws. It's not legal for us to put anyone to death, the Jews declared. They said this so that Jesus' words might be fulfilled, indicating what kind of death he was going to die. Then Pilate went back into the headquarters, summoned Jesus, and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, are you asking this on your own, or have others told you about me? I am not a Jew, am I? Pilate replied, your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done? My kingdom is not of this world, said Jesus. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. You are a king then, Pilate asked. You say that I'm a king, Jesus replied. I was born for this, and I have come into this world for this, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. What is truth? Said Pilate. After he said this, he went out to the Jews and told them, I find no grounds for charging him. So Jesus, in this time, according to Luke, he says, yeah, I am, or if you say so, or he says, basically saying, yes, I am the king of the Jews. That is true. I am the king. I am a king. I am the king of the Jews. But I also happen to be a king from a world that is not of this world. And Pilate basically thinks this is a crazy man. It would be like if somebody came here and they're like, yeah, I'm the king of outer space. That's probably how a similar way that Pilate is interpreting it. And so Pilate says he's not guilty. The people rise up. They cry out, crucify, crucify, crucify. Pilate is worried that the crowd is just going to rebel, basically. And so verse 23 in chapter 23 of Luke, it says, but they kept up the pressure, demanding with loud voices that he be crucified, and their voices won out. So Pilate decided to grant their demand and released the one they were asking for, who was Barabbas, who had been thrown into prison for rebellion and murder. But he handed Jesus over to their will. I think that's interesting. Pilate is giving in to their will, not realizing that all along that this was part of God's plan. We see that Jesus already said in the book of John, he already told Pilate, like, this is why I was here. It's so difficult, I think, for people who are soft-natured, maybe, to say, you know what, like, why did Jesus have to die? He was innocent. Well, like, it's so that we can have our sins atoned for. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow and the next couple days. So thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We'll look forward to seeing you here again soon. Peace out, Girl Scout.